Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, who is Skyping in from the D.C. area. Daniel, welcome to the program this morning.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Very good, and a lot of people have been watching and anxiously analyzing the big summit. It's come and it's gone, but there's still a lot of talk about it, and now there'll be a lot of talking about who won and who lost. Well, our title suggests, did Trump win or did Kim win? So I don't think that's going to be neat. I think time will tell. Hopefully, it's like economics, both sides win. You're not supposed to have one guy win at the expense of the other. So if we apply that, we say maybe they both won, they both were smiling, they're both going to go home and claim a great victory, and that's okay. But I can't help but feel a little bit proud of the fact that our views, which aren't mentioned very often, and even though they weren't mentioned as our views, they really were talking about it. They're talking about a peace treaty and get rid of the war. They're talking about bringing troops home. They're talking about, spending less money and no more military games over there. Wow, that is pretty good. Now, that's not meaning I'm, an optimist, say, victory is here, victory is here. No, that's just a tremendous inspiration for the enemy. And the enemy, of course, the philosophic enemies are the neocons. And they are going to be energized, and they're going to be blasting Trump. And I just wonder what happened? What happened to the concerns we were expressing? He had neocon advisors there, Pompeo and Bolton, and of course at the UN, Haley. All these people helped him on. Daniel, do you think they could have been props, to make the neocons feel secure? Then all of a sudden, they're talking about a much more sensible foreign policy. Of course, we have a long way to go. But in the meantime, the world took it pretty gracefully. The markets didn't blink an eye. The markets haven't even blinked an eye over the pending trade war that looks like it's going to continue for a while. But there's a lot of unknowns there. But this summit had nothing to do with the market, so it's probably more neutral than a major victory for one person or a major catastrophe for another. But in a way, we should feel slightly better than we did, 6 months ago or a year ago when the attack was very, very strong, very, very bilateral. We didn't have a president suggesting, what Trump has suggested on here. So let's continue to keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully this will get sorted out and we'll move in the right direction.
Dr. Paul, as anyone who watches our show knows, we've been as hard on President Trump as any show, but we've done it from a policy perspective. We've criticized his policy, we've criticized the neocons. But when he does something that, you couldn't help it. We were glued to the TV last night as news was coming out from the summit. You couldn't help but feel that something historic was going on. Trump, now he did it his way. There's no question about it. It may not be the way the rest of us would do it, but this personal diplomacy that he had, just look at the body language. It seemed extraordinarily successful. It really feels like an historic event.
And people said, his critics are saying, he didn't get anything. He gave too much. He didn't get a thing. But maybe he did get more than people realize. If you move toward peace and a sensible foreign policy, there's tremendous victory in that. But when they say he didn't get anything, they want Trump to rub his nose into it. But there are suggestions there. There's a lot of unknowns. What about denuclearization? First, the North has to denuke. And second, some people talk about the whole peninsula. And there's nothing going to be magic about that. And sometimes I wonder about, just how strong Kim has been or is. And I did a speech one time, a long time ago in Congress, and it got a little bit of attention. It was called What If? And I went through some incidents that, what if this were so and this were so? And it was a popular approach. Now, the thought that crossed my mind is this. What if Kim doesn't really have much of a nuclear arsenal? There's claims and fear of what he has, and has technology now. He could send it all the way to California. But remember the lies that we were told, about Libya and about Iraq and how dangerous Assad was, and Syria, and they go on and on. But this is the reason that if that turns out, that's a pretty neat trick. He was negotiating. I don't play cards, but he might have been dealing from a weak hand.
I was going to say he should end up in Vegas if he pulls off a bluff like that. But in a sense, it's irrelevant whether he has them or not, because this process, if it continues moving toward peace, moving toward dialogue, everything that you've been talking about, moving toward dialogue, opening the doors, not slamming them shut with sanctions and war games, opening the door to talking, looking at areas of mutual interest. First of all, we've got to love it just from from the sense that it's driving the neocons crazy. I was reading Twitter this morning, and they're just looking for some way to pick it apart. And I saw a Reuters piece, and Reuters is very interventionist when it comes to foreign policy. It's a very globalist news story. Here's their headline: Trump-Kim summit ends with promise, light on substance. What do you expect? I mean, that's what we were saying yesterday, that we hoped it would be somewhat light on substance. You don't have to get too far into the trees.
Well, Daniel, you make a real good point about, does it really matter how many nukes he has? No, I think in a narrow sense, that whole thing is it's not the guns that kill, it's the people. So it's not the fact that somebody might have a nuke that makes the difference. It's who's running things and how they're getting along. Are they trading with each other? And the two big breakthroughs in recent history that I was at least well aware of, and that was one with Nixon, with the breakthrough with China. And they had nukes, they had plenty of nukes, and yet there was a breakthrough. What about the Soviets when Reagan had a breakthrough there? They had them, they still do have them, but they were not relevant to moving along. So this idea that they have to, denuclearize and do all these things, and that's the kind of things they do on people that they know they don't have anything, like Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. They knew they didn't have anything, and they didn't have to worry about it. But I think your point about the number of weapons they have is not as relevant as the sincerity or the need, the political and economic needs. I talked about that yesterday. Who knows? Maybe it's the economic needs of North Korea. Maybe they're wising up. Maybe they're recognizing socialism and communism doesn't work. And that's the reason the Soviet system collapsed. It wasn't because we spent more money in the military or we sweet-talked them. They flat out were broke. But I also make the point, we're broke too. And the only thing we're living on is a shoestring and trust in our dollar, and our credit ratings still high, but undeservedly so. But compared to all the other countries, we get away with it because we still issue the special currency, the reserve currency of the world. So we can get away with it. But I think there's a lot more to bringing about peace than counting up weapons. It has to do with some needs and some desires. And the one thing, Daniel, remember a year or so ago, and we even said this on the program, that they're painting Kim as a crazy nut. And we were suggesting maybe he isn't as crazy as they think. I think he made a big PR mistake. He should have had a suit and tie on because the other day he had this blue suit and tie on. I say, he looks so different. He doesn't look like the people that paint him. So, but anyway, I think he comes out pretty good. But I think the people of South Korea come out pretty good. I think Moon comes out pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
And there are people, and you might address this a little bit, people say this is a big deal and a big victory for China.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case because China's been, in a vice between the U.S., South Korea, and North Korea. They've, on one hand, tried to protect North Korea from some of the more bellicose approaches of the North and South in the previous years, but they've also been a little bit frustrated with the with this kind of the sclerosis of North Korean society, their inability to move and adapt. So I think China wins big as well. But if I can just summarize the agreement, because I think it's important. It's criticized for being too vague, but I think, as we said yesterday, if I remember right, we want it to be a little bit vague, to kind of open the door and see what walks in. But here I summarize in writing the 4 points that they signed. The U.S. and North Korea to commit to establish new relations in accordance with the desire of the people to live in peace and prosperity. I like that. I like those two things. It reminds me, maybe they're on our Institute website. Number 2, U.S. and North Korea will join efforts to build a stable peace on the peninsula. 3, they commit to denuclearization of the peninsula. And 4, they commit to recovering POWs and MIAs. I think that's a good basis. And I hate to sound so enthusiastic because probably something will happen even before the show's over to put us back in gloom and doom. But I think we have to take it when we can get it.
Well, there's no doubt about it, and there's a reason for us to be slightly more optimistic, and reasons to explain the marketplace. The marketplace didn't go nuts if there was something very, very bad that was coming out of this. So in a way, by being rather neutral in the interpretation is really pretty good. You can talk to somebody like who has been demonized, and the president, confers on him some credibility, and the world doesn't come to an end. And all of a sudden, it's amazing. We're always talking about the people who are just sort of like zombies. They follow their political parties blindly, and all this. No matter what they said, they have to be a partisan. But the statistics are showing both independents and Democrats and a lot of Republicans as well have supported the idea of this. Yet a year ago, if you'd have done a poll, they would have never talked about it. So I think that we'd have to give Trump some credit for that change in attitude. But when he calls us up and says, what we're going to do now, we're going to get rid of all those neocons that are pestering me in the White House. Yeah. I'm tired of listening to those guys. And what we're going to do is go with saving money and less military exercise. But I tell you what, and this is something, Daniel, I want to suggest that we need to talk about. This is a good move, but other things are still happening. I don't like what's going on in the Middle East. I don't like what Saudi Arabia is doing. I don't like what's happening in Yemen, and we're a part of that. So we cannot deceive ourselves into some of the problems that we need to address.
Absolutely, and as you point out, Trump does deserve credit. Someone else deserves credit, I think, that hasn't really been mentioned, and actually a good friend of ours, Dan, I won't say his last name, but wrote to me earlier this morning, and he made a great point, and I said, I'm going to say it on the show if we can, but I think Dennis Rodman deserves credit. Yeah. And this goes to what you always say about sports diplomacy. Here's a great sports star. He started 4 years ago going over to North Korea, making friends with Kim, and I think probably showing him that although he's rather unusual in his appearance, that Americans are willing to reach out. So I think he can't be forgotten. He deserves a lot of credit for this too.
And I don't know whether the media wanted to mock him and make fun of him, but he cried at this time when the announcement came.
Touching,
and
very
I'd
touching.
have to say they were probably sincere. I mean, that was pretty authentic. So yes, when he went over there, I thought, I don't know whether his heart is in it for peace, and what's the ulterior motive. I don't know. I don't follow the sports that much, but actually, I think you're right. I think he came out as a benefit. Remember, well, you probably don't remember when Cassius Clay wanted to buck the army. He was seen as committing treason, and he was tried, and they tried to put him in jail and all these things. But now he's referenced as somebody who was heroic, standing up to fighting in a war that he considered immoral. And so this is very important, and that'll just reinforce my belief that sports are very valuable. And of course, this is how this whole thing got started, with the Olympics, and with some of Kim's people and family going down to the South, and that's why Moon deserves some credit. But really, we shouldn't be shocked and we shouldn't be surprised. The tragedy is that governments have been so abusive to the people, because if the Korean Peninsula had been left alone after 1945, I suggest the possibility would have been very great that the Korean people would have figured out how to get together instead of this divisiveness, the division, and the wars being fought and families divided. It's so bad. But I don't think if you'd have taken a referendum anywhere along the way on North and South and the Korean people, because I think one of these outstanding leaders in South Korea, he was born of parents from North Korea. So it's a mixture, it just never made any sense, and so I lay the blame to these past problems as interference. So the sooner we can extricate ourselves, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you happen to see this clip yet, Dr. Paul. I just watched it before the show because I'd read about it. But it was George Stephanopoulos, who was in the Clinton administration, now at NBC News, interviewing President Trump. And I tell you, that was an amazing couple of minutes. And also the look on Stephanopoulos' face, because he's part of the establishment. You better believe it. But Trump said, hey, I want to get our troops out of there. I didn't want to have them there because I want to stop these exercises. I want to stop the military exercises. I view them as provocative and expensive. Why are we spending this money, all of these war games over there? And it was, I think Stephanopoulos was shocked, but it was really a great couple of minute clip.
Yeah, that's right. And Daniel, we're going to close off now. Did you have one more comment? You want to remind the people about what we're doing in August?
August 18th, ronpaulinstitute.org/conference. Come join us. We're going to talk about this and so many other things. My final word, if you don't mind, Dr. Paul, is I would just tell President Trump, you're on a roll. You've sorted out this North Korea thing. You're on the right track. It's time to work with Russia. Use your momentum. Start mending the fences with Russia and move ahead in that area.
Okay, very good. And I want to thank all the viewers for tuning in today. And we take a risk by doing these programs. Just think of all the anti-Trump people, how angry they're going to be at us for saying something, reasonably decent about the president. But hopefully people will sort this out instead of being in two camps. Anti-Trump, pro-Trump, automatically pro-Republican, anti-Republican, pro-Democrat, why don't they look at the issues? That's all that counts. And unfortunately, the bad ideas are bipartisan. What I'd like to do is introduce the notion that good ideas should be bipartisan. So if we're seeking peace and liberty, and if we're seeking a sound economic policy and seeking a system where we are promoting individual liberty by individuals rather than by groups, why shouldn't we all join together in defending that situation? That, of course, is my goal, to continue to fight for peace and liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.